Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing tonight? Welcome to Steve Film Center. My name is Keith Garcia, Chief Programmer here at this lovely little movie palace that you're nestled so comfortably in. And welcome to our very special film and lecture tonight around Birdman, or, damn it, I always forget. I was about to say its subtitle.
The unexpected virtue of ignorance.
The unexpected virtue of ignorance. My own ignorance and not keeping the title straight. I hope you guys are excited for a really good time to get deep into this film. This Best Picture winner that also has so many interesting tangents and aspects about it to talk about further than your average Academy Award Best Picture winner, I think. From Alejandro Iñárritu, this film comes from, and we're just going to get into it. So I'll introduce you to a couple of folks along the way, lead into your guest lecturer for the night. First up is Gabriel. Oh, see, I messed it up. Gildensteiner?
That sounds like a bit. Grinsteiner.
Grinsteiner, damn it. It's such a fantastic castle or beer name. Grinsteiner. Gabriel Grinsteiner from DeFi to tell a little bit about DeFi, which many of you guys are associated with. So, Gabriel.
Thanks so much. All right, hello everybody. I am the coordinator of DeFi, which stands for the Denver Project for Humanistic Inquiry, and we run very similar programs to what you're going to see tonight, basically trying to explore some deeper aspects of some of the, let's say, popular attractions around our city, but beyond that, also getting folks from outside of town, what we call some of the greatest minds of our time, basically come to talk with us and share their thoughts. If you enjoyed tonight, please check out our website. It's dphi.org, and you can get some instructions on how to attend some of our future events, which we're going to be participating in the Denver Film Festival, for example, and doing really similar things to this just next month. And then, you know, for the future, keep it in mind. So from here, I'd like to introduce Dr. Adam Graves. He's a professor of philosophy at MSU Denver, and he's going to give us a quick introduction to this movie, Birdman. We'll give us some things to talk about for now. So.
Woo! Thank you, Keith and Gabriel. Really appreciate it. Warm welcome. Thank you all for coming out. I promise I'm not going to read through all of these notes, but this film is a hard film to introduce, in part because it's just so incredibly rich. I think one could tackle this film from any number of angles and still kind of pull out some really rewarding things. One could talk about, for example, the fact that it's shot in, well, it appears to be shot in a single, incredibly audacious long take, which tracks the actors through tiny little narrow corridors behind a backstage of a theater into the streets of New York. That was one of the early decisions that Iñárritu decided on early on in his conception of this film. One could talk about the the irony that's baked right into the production of the film, going as far as the decisions surrounding the casting. As you probably know, I'm curious, how many of you have seen this film already? Raise your hand if you've seen it. Okay, that's about roughly half of you. That's good. So the fact that Michael Keaton is cast as a kind of washed-up Hollywood actor who was once famous for playing a winged superhero in the late 80s and early 90s and is now trying to redeem his career through some kind of artistic achievement. Of course, that irony is not lost on the audience, knowing that that's also a description of Michael Keaton playing this exact role in a Academy Award-winning film. So I'm going to focus on something that's a little bit more, I don't know, particular to my own range of interests, perhaps a little bit obscure. I'm going to talk about the relationship between Birdman and Socrates. I want to claim that Birdman is a Socrates-like character, and that in order to make sense of some of the dominant themes in the film, we might have to return to some of Plato's famous texts. So I want to start by telling a quick story about Socrates. Some of you, those of you who are my students, already know this story, but Socrates had a friend who visited the Apollo temple in Delphi, and he returned with an oracle, with a prophecy, according to which Socrates is, among all human beings, the wisest. And when Socrates heard this prophecy, he thought there must be something wrong about this because I hardly know anything of value at all. So clearly this can't possibly be true. It must be some kind of a riddle. So Socrates sets out to refute or to disprove this oracle, and he does this systematically by seeking out people who are purportedly wise, and then he asks them questions like, what is the nature of virtue? What is the nature of justice, of piety, etc., etc. And in asking these purportedly wise people these questions, he was shocked to discover that they really didn't have satisfactory answers. They just simply thought they did. So Socrates concluded, rather unexpectedly, that in fact maybe he is in some sense wiser than even these supposedly wise figures, because at least he is aware of his own ignorance, whereas these people think they know things that they in fact do not know. So it turns out that there's a kind of unexpected virtue to Socratic ignorance. And in another text, another famous text by Plato, the Symposium, Socrates draws this out a little bit. He says, of course, philosophy, as most of you know, philosopher, Sophia, it is the love of wisdom. But to love something is to want it or to need it. And one can't be in need of what one already possesses. So the love of wisdom, philosophy, is something that one can only do when one is in a state of ignorance. So that ignorance, or at least Socratic ignorance, turns out to be a kind of necessary condition for doing philosophy in the first place. So again, what we have here is this unexpected virtue of Socratic ignorance, which we don't have the title up here, but that is the subtitle, or really the alternate title to this film. Notice that it's not Birdman, the unexpected virtue of ignorance. It's Birdman or the unexpected virtue of ignorance. So I think let's leave Birdman out of it, and let's just focus on the Socratic theme. I'm going to turn my page. So at this point, maybe some of you are thinking, yeah, that's really just an arbitrary, probably insignificant coincidence, that there seems to be some connection between Socratic ignorance and the subtitle of this film, until one notices that this film is about the production of a play, which is based on Raymond Carver's famous short story, What Do We Talk About When We Talk About Love, which is itself widely recognized as being a kind of retelling of Plato's Symposium. Of course, a symposium is just a drinking party. It's where Greek largely men got around and drank and told stories or gave speeches. And in Plato's Symposium, he gives a speech. They give speeches in praise of love. Now, I want to argue that in order to understand the connection between this seemingly critical theme of love in Birdman and the more obvious theme that runs throughout the film, namely the quest for recognition through creative achievement, we really do need to return to Socrates. Now, love, in the most general sense, is the desire to possess, and this is all from the Symposium. Love, in the most general sense, is the desire to possess what is good and what is beautiful. But not just to possess it here and now, but to possess it forever. So there is implicit in love a kind of desire or quest for immortality, a desire to transcend the limits of human finitude. Now, this, according to Socrates, explains the central role of sexual attraction within the experience of love, or eros. Love, of course, tends towards reproduction, right? Sorry, it's really awkward to turn this page with one hand. It's really horrible. So love tends towards reproduction through the sexual act. So it turns out that animal reproduction is the only form it's the only form of immortality available to non-human mortal organisms. Now, there are three ways that humans express their desire for immortality. Their desire to overcome the ravages of time, to outlive their, quote, brief moment upon the stage, and to remain relevant or significant beyond death. Those of you who've seen the movie might remember I hope I'm not giving much away here, but the reference to Macbeth. One way to transcend the limits of human finitude is through bodily reproduction, as we've just said. Through, just like animals, we can have offspring who love and remember us, at least some people's offspring. And you'll see that the prospect of human reproduction plays a kind of a recurring role in this film, right? Whether or not one might be having a child. Another is through hubris, that is to say we can believe or we can take ourselves to be something more than human, that we can leave behind the human condition altogether and become like gods. Here one can think of Icarus, another kind of constant reference throughout the film. Icarus, of course, famously, was Daedalus' son. He built himself some wings. He was so proud of them that he flew too high in the sky, got too close to the sun, his wings melted, he crashed and died in the sea. Between these two extremes, between mere animal reproduction and hubris, the kind of effort to transcend human finitude through becoming divine, Socrates proposes a third alternative. And this is really his third conception of love, which he defines as giving birth in beauty. And I think what he means by this is something like creating works of great beauty, to gain a kind of immortality by leaving behind not just a physical body, but also a body of work that is beloved throughout the earth. This film, I would wager, represents a man obsessed with immortality, torn between these three possibilities. And I want to end by noting that it is no accident that the film opens with the poem by Raymond Carver called The Late Fragment, which he himself had engraved on his tombstone. And if I can get this last page turned, we're going to be successfully concluding this lecture. Okay. And did you get what you wanted from this life even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. So what I invite you to contemplate as you watch this film is think about what Riggin, the main character, really wants insofar as he wants to be loved. What it is that he's after in creating this work of art. So we'll stick around after the film. We're going to have a discussion. Hopefully, it won't be really a Q&A. I'm not going to have any answers for you, but definitely we'll have you'll have an opportunity to share your thoughts on my kind of philosophical take of Birdman. So enjoy the show. It's really amazing. It's a great piece of art, but it's also incredibly entertaining. Thank you so much.